They didn't see a threat, they saw a pet project with primitive teeth. Now Earth's gone, and their universe is bleeding to death from the hole we punched through it. Commander Kale Vox, last transmission from Stellavarium. They didn't stand when he entered. Not out of disrespect, out of instinctual dread. Even among the alien elite, there were some who remembered his face from war footage. Commander Kale Vox. The Iron Anvo. The Butcher of Row 9. A relic of Earth's final unification, now draped in silence and scars. His footsteps rang across the obsidian floor of the Stellavarium's Grand Convergence Hall, echoing louder than the 1,000 voices that had bickered there moments before. Vox didn't bow. Didn't blink. He walked to the center and stopped. His coat billowed faintly behind him, worn at the edges like a flag flown too long. His plasma saber rested on his hip, openly displayed despite council protocol. His voice came low, gravel wrapped in venom. You summoned Earth like a dog. But I don't bark. I bury. A ripple passed through the chamber, chittering from insected delegates, stiff shuffles from scaled beings, optic lenses narrowing. Only the archivist of the Galizian triumvirate dared respond, tone dripping with imperial patience. Commander Vox, the council is. You'll address me as sovereign representative of the human continuum. Vox cut in. Commander is a title I retired after your fleets got turned inside out. Silence thickened. High Minister Threx of the Shala Collective, a translucent being with 10 rotating heads, spoke in simultaneous chords. We detected dimensional fractures originating in the helix wastes. Entire sectors vanished. Earth's encryption fingerprints were found in the quantum aftershock. Correct, said Vox. You found our signature. Good dog. Outrage flared. The Tlan delegate rose from his perch, arms buzzing with energy. You dare mock the Galactic Council? Vox tilted his head slightly, as if amused by a slow-learning child. Then he reached into a case strapped to his back and rolled a silver sphere onto the council floor. It cracked open with a hiss. A shimmering field projected the neural crown of the ZYY Thalhive Queen, once thought to be the Accord's most indomitable war being. 4 counselors recoiled. 1 vomited acid. Vox gave them a moment to absorb it. Dead 14 days ago. Sector 19H. She squealed like an infant when we collapsed her synaptic core. I didn't come here for permission. I came to give you context. You had no authority, the archivist hissed. Vox's voice dropped. Authority? We begged you to listen. For 60 years we were polite. Grateful. Patient. Earth brought math, music, memory tech. You gave us titles without power and watched us like a zoo exhibit. But we were never here to be liked. We were here to watch you rot. The ager of the psychic strain leaned forward, tendrils twitching. You're bluffing. You're alone. 1 man. Kale smiled. 1 man. In your house. Carrying an illegal weapon. Broadcasting live to every remaining Earth-linked embassy. Do you think we don't know what fear smells like in this place? The lights flickered. Distantly, alarms triggered. The holographic star chart glitched, pulsed red, then bloomed into chaos. System after system, old Earth embassy sites, flared like suns and vanished from council registry. Kale didn't look away. That's not war. That's extraction. We're deleting our footprint. You're destabilizing half the Accord. Threx bellowed. This is annihilation. Vox's tone sharpened. It's restraint. If this were annihilation, you wouldn't be standing. You'd be cinders choking on vacuum. But Earth grew up. We realized we don't need your table. We need your silence. So we're leaving. An explosion rocked the station's distant hull. The Council's psionic defense grid flickered for the first time in 7 centuries. Panic broke across faces designed never to show it. You created new galaxies, the archivist whispered, as if realizing the scale for the first time. Living starfields. Engineered life. Systems, outside space-time. We seeded 12 so far. Odysseys. Born from quantum ash. Populated with future kin, smarter, stronger, faster. They don't fear entropy. They weaponize it. You won't find them. Not until they're digging you out of your last moon. You're mad, the Ager rasped. No, Vox said, stepping closer. You're stagnant. You had millennia. We had centuries. And we still lapped you. You built a throne out of arrogance. We built a forge out of hunger. A siren screeched overhead. The Stellivarium AI shrieked a system-level override. Emergency shields activated. And Kale stood still, unblinking. You're about to ask why I came here. Why risk myself, right? He let the question hang. Because I wanted to see your faces when it hit. Wanted to see the smug bastards who called us primitives realize, we're not your understudies. We're your successors. A sphere blinked into his palm. Smooth, black, featureless. He thumbed it once. A gate split open behind him, a singularity rimmed with golden light, impossible geometry folding in and out. I walked in alone so history would remember. One man. A sword. And the end of an empire. No one moved. No one dared. You should have taken our hand when we offered it. Now we take the future instead. He turned. The gate opened wider, humming like a predator's breath. Behind him, the council screamed. Vox didn't look back. Goodbye, gentle beings. And Kale Vox walked out of their universe. You thought this was war? It wasn't. War implies struggle. This was subtraction. The council screamed into overlapping languages, demands for answers echoing through the hall. Vox watched them like a butcher at a choir recital, amused, unimpressed, and already halfway gone. Minister Threx's faces spun wildly as he sputtered accusations of genocide, collapse, universal heresy. Kale barely listened. His neural shard was syncing with a live feed from the Void Relay, Earth's final broadcast node. 11 Accord sectors were now dark. Gone. Not bombed, not burned. Rewritten. Explain what you've done! A serpentine voice snapped. This? Odyssey break, what is it? Vox shifted his weight, his knuckles resting lightly on the war table. Odyssey break was our answer to your ceiling. You capped evolution. You praised stagnation. We didn't want to inherit your throne. We wanted to set it on fire. A flurry of languages spat back. Vox raised one hand. Let me simplify it for the cerebrally challenged. While you debated symbiotic legislature and held galactic poetry festivals, Earth invested in expansion at the base level of existence. Null matter synthesis. Chronocollapse reactors. And finally, Genesis encoding. He reached into his coat and dropped a glass prism onto the table. Within it, a spiral galaxy shimmered. Real. Miniature. Alive. This isn't a projection. It's a self-contained, living system. One of hundreds. Every one of these carries a unique time constant and evolutionary seed line. In 1,000 years, they'll make you look like Bronze Age algae. A thick-jawed delegate from the Cormash Enclave stepped forward, armor creaking. You created children? Weapons? Kale's eyes glinted with humor. Both. But smarter. Hungrier. Designed to thrive where you wither. And more importantly, unbound by your accord. The archivist leaned forward. This violates every clause of the core sentience accords. So does cloning forbidden lifeforms for council pets. Kale snapped. But I didn't come to discuss hypocrisy. I came to announce extinction. Yours. A silence dropped like a guillotine. Even the AI nodes went quiet. You won't survive without us. One whispered. Trade, science, stabilization. You mean leeching? Vox interrupted. Every one of your advancements is just a prettier cage. Earth didn't escape. We transcended. That's what Odyssey break is. An exit. And you weren't invited. You'll collapse? The archivist hissed. No species can evolve alone. Kale's laugh was cold, short. You're still operating on linear models. Odyssey civilizations are interlinked by folded synapse streams. Their first language is quantum. Their first instinct is war. We're not isolated. We're ascendant. Then why are you here, Kale Vox? Minister Threx demanded. Why monologue when you could just vanish? Kale leaned in. Because the dead don't scream unless someone tells them they're dying. He tapped his neural shard. Want proof? He triggered a visual burst across the chamber's dome. The council watched helplessly as 12 projection fields bloomed into existence, live feeds from across the Accord. Earth's former embassies, now blooming with Omega constructs, were building siphon spirals, dragging star energy into fold engines. In each frame, their own worlds bent, buildings liquefied, skies shattered. You let Earth into your house to mock it. We mapped every corridor. And now we're setting charges behind the walls. We should have wiped you out. A deep voice growled. Vox's gaze snapped toward it. The towering representative of the Carnix Dominia, the only race that had ever openly threatened Earth with annihilation, stood now in full military regalia. You tried, Kale said flatly. 3 times. You just didn't realize the fleet that vaporized your colonies wasn't authorized. It was a test run. The Carnix moved forward, but Vox didn't flinch. He let silence stretch again. The silence of understanding. The silence that comes before the fall. The Accord is not a governing body, he continued, now addressing them all. It's a hospice. A gallery of once great species afraid of entropy. You feared death so much, you stopped living. You saw us as chaos. Unrefined. Dangerous. He smiled now, not kindly. You were right. Threx trembled. You're ending trillions of lives. Kale's voice sharpened. No. We're closing a chapter. Earth offered partnership. You offered pity. You turned us into shadows. We responded by becoming gods. They'll hunt you, a quiet voice said. Those who survive. They'll unify. Retaliate. Kale nodded. Let them. We've already started building wars to test them. Your legacy won't be vengeance, it'll be becoming the training dummies for the future. He turned to leave, but paused. Do you want to know the worst part? He asked over his shoulder. We didn't even do this out of hate. We did it because we were bored. The prism still sat on the table. The living galaxy within it pulsed once, then flickered into white flame. The chamber's ambient field dropped. Kale tapped his shard again. Across the feed, more stars fell dark. You never asked what came after Earth. He opened his palm. A black insignia hovered above it, angular, alien, human-born. Meet the continuum. Then he walked. No grand gesture. No explosion. Only footsteps. And the slow realization that humanity had already replaced them, before anyone knew they were gone. You still think this is a negotiation? Kale said as the chamber cracked with tension. But I'm not here to barter. I'm here to deliver the verdict. The council stared, dozens of species, a gallery of dying gods cloaked in ceremonial irrelevance. Panic pulsed beneath their silence. The galactic map above them distorted again, another human fold gate activated, swallowing an entire relay hub. Vox didn't even glance at it. You never asked what we were building. You watched Earth climb, assumed it was mimicry. You assumed slow growth. Limited imagination. Primitive patience. We were studying your laws to write our own replacements. Minister Threx's voice broke through, trembling with synthetic undertone. What gives you the right to do this? Kale turned his head slowly, the movement measured, deliberate. Right? You mistake conquest for choice. We didn't ask for permission. We executed inevitability. You crowned yourselves rulers of the known. Earth built what you refused to imagine. The room's temperature shifted. The Council's biosphere stabilizers strained to keep equilibrium. Kale's neural shard shimmered again. A global ping, 20 more constructs had activated. The data glowed in his vision. Precision. Timing. Irrevocable. He gave them nothing to hope for. We're not burning your house down, he continued. We're removing it from the timeline. The insected Viager rose again, mandibles trembling. You're insane. This is suicidal arrogance. Kale smirked. You know about arrogance. Tell me, how many cycles did you keep Earth on your leash, dangling tech in front of us like we were pets? You fed us scraps. Made us beg for entry. Watched as we clawed our way in. And you never once stopped to wonder what we were building in the dark. You lied, the archivist hissed. Kale stepped forward. No. We waited. You lied. You called us allies while stealing neural blueprints, suppressing our AI protocols, assassinating our off-world engineers. Earth remembers. We forgave nothing. We just waited for the moment when your grip softened. And when it did, we pulled the trigger. High above, another sector winked out. Gone. The chamber's floor shook. Some delegates cried out. Kale's voice sliced through the fear. Every embassy you gave us was a seed. A hidden gate. A siphon. Your bureaucratic arrogance gave us access to your infrastructure. You never imagined we'd use it as a demolition charge. You always thought war would come with fleets, screams, fire. No. We came like entropy. Quiet. Absolute. A delegate from the Skarn Dominion slammed a clawed fist against the table. We were warned of your aggression. You concealed it well. I didn't conceal it. I'm standing here in full war regalia, saber exposed. You just never believed the monkey with the sharp stick could reach your throat. The chamber's walls trembled again. A star map to the right of Kale's platform displayed another collapsed sector. The systems weren't just vanishing, they were folding. Not into black holes, but into raw computational matter. Recycled reality. Minister Threx grasped at fading authority. You must stop. If you destroy the Accord, you destabilize the gravitational balance of 7 spiral arms. You'll destroy everything. Kale's voice dropped into a whisper. We're not destroying it. We're repurposing it. The gravitational ripples are intentional. It's not death. It's foundation. For what? Threx croaked. Kale finally raised his hand. In his palm, a hologram formed, flickering, then stabilizing. A map of something no one recognized. No star names. No familiar anchor points. Not even familiar physics. For Genesis 12, Kale said softly. The first complete reality designed by humanity. A closed-loop bioverse with controllable time flow, stratified consciousness, and self-correcting entropy. The Accord is the raw material. One of the amphibian delegates whispered. You're building your own universe. No, Kale replied. We're building ours. He stepped away from the war table, his every motion transmitting certainty. A machine had no more confidence executing its directive. You mistook silence for compliance. You mistook curiosity for inferiority. Earth asked to be part of the Accord to understand your limits. Then we engineered past them. Another spike of light lit the map. One of the Accord's oldest systems blinked out. The delegate from that system fell silent, limbs trembling. Vox didn't stop. You called us reckless. Too emotional. Too chaotic. That was projection. You feared our speed. Our drive. You feared how little we needed the leash you offered. So you branded us volatile. His hand hovered over his neural shard. We were never volatile. We were surgical. Alarms erupted. Emergency overrides activated. Bio-lockdowns engaged. Council security attempted to trigger containment. Nothing responded. You can't stop this, Kale said calmly. We rewrote your control layers a decade ago. You gave us keys to your house. We replaced the foundation while you slept. You'll kill billions, someone cried. No, Kale corrected. You killed them when you decided their future wasn't worth evolving. We're just closing the book. Someone lunged toward him. A desperate motion. Kale didn't move. The gate behind him flared open, smooth, shimmering, crackling with arclight. The attacker stopped, frozen by something only they could see within it. You're not a race, the attacker said in awe. You're something else now. Kale nodded. We were humans. Now we're the architects of what comes next. The chamber descended into chaos, pleading, threats, collapse. And Cale turned his back to it. "One act of mercy," he said. "We left a record. Of what you were. Of what you did. The Continuum will study it. But they will not repeat it." He walked toward the gate. "Goodbye, Council." The gate swallowed him whole. And behind him, everything began to unravel. They thought his departure was the end. They thought if they contained the collapse, salvaged a few systems, clung to their remaining technologies, they could survive. But Cale Vox had not come to announce the end of the Accord. He had come to set the final machine in motion. By the time the last echoes of his footsteps faded, the Council realized survival was not an option they had ever been offered. The Grand Convergence Hall erupted in chaos. Delegates clawed over each other, screaming for evacuation, for reinforcements, for answers. Security drones blared impotent alarms. Emergency protocols cascaded into system failures. Screens shattered under the weight of impossible data flooding in, readouts from every quadrant flashing the same message in a language none of them had authorized. Transition in progress. The archivist slammed his fists into the console, rerouting energy reserves toward defensive matrices, but the grids were already bleeding. The counselors hurled desperate psychic blasts at the ceiling, tried collapsing the chamber into a singularity to cut themselves off from the system-wide invasion. Nothing worked. The reality was sinking in, merciless and clear. This wasn't a virus. This wasn't sabotage. It was the new architecture of the universe riding over the old. Minister Threx staggered toward the central dais, his robes shredded, optics dilated in primal terror. "Seal the Nexus gates! Sever the hyperspace pathways! We can isolate!" "We cannot!" bellowed Viager, psychic nodes leaking pale ichor. "The very substrate of the Accord is compromised. It's not an infection. It's metamorphosis." Above them, the stellar charts pulsed once more. Only a quarter of their known territories still gleamed. The rest had gone dark or warped into geometries that defied traditional space-time mapping. Where once there were thriving civilizations, there now loomed what could only be called scars upon the cosmos, wounds torn by something too precise, too vast to comprehend. Delegates screamed at one another, accusing, pleading, breaking under pressure they had never prepared for. Some tried to flee toward personal transports, others to trigger system locks to hide deep inside null space vaults. It didn't matter. The vaults themselves folded away like smoke, devoured from the inside. The embassies Earth had once held, the ones the Council thought were insignificant, had turned into gravitational spikes, collapse engines in waiting. The high doors to the chamber creaked, twisted, and groaned open against the panicked rush. They expected armies. They expected weapons. Instead, through the archway walked something that was not Cale Vox, but bore the undeniable mark of his legacy. A figure in smooth, reflective armor, no insignia, no visible features, no weapons, stepped forward. In its wake, the very air seemed to tighten. The figure stopped at the center of the chamber where Cale had once stood. It said nothing. It didn't need to. Every surviving delegate instinctively understood. This was a Continuum herald. The Carnix Dominia's warlord roared and charged, kinetic disruptor blades drawn. Before he crossed half the distance, the air shimmered around him. His charge collapsed into itself, shredded into quantum dust without impact, without sound. The delegates recoiled. No declaration of war. No list of demands. Only demonstration. The figure finally spoke, its voice synthetic and layered with infinite echoes. "This is not a conquest. This is calibration." Threx clutched at his chest, as if understanding had physically crushed his heart. "Calibration for what?" he gasped. The herald turned its head slightly, as if acknowledging the question as unworthy. "Calibration for relevancy. Calibration for survival. You are no longer relevant. No! We can adapt. We can serve." The archivist howled, prostrating himself. "You already failed." The herald raised a single hand, and from its fingers, a pulse rippled out, subtle, almost beautiful. The walls trembled. The stars visible through the chamber's skylights twisted into spirals, flickered, and blinked out. An entire star cluster, erased as if it had never been born. "Please," one of the insectoid delegates whimpered broken. "Give us a chance. Give us." "You were given chances. You chose decay. You chose stasis. You chose cowardice dressed as wisdom." The herald's voice carried no hatred. It was mechanical, absolute. The judgment had been rendered long before this moment. Cale Vox had simply been the final messenger. The Continuum was the executioner. Minister Threx staggered to his feet. He tried to summon dignity, but it was a pathetic imitation of the authority he once wielded. Tell us what comes next." The herald paused. For a moment, an eternity, it considered them. "Evolution," it said simply. The pulse expanded again. Reality fractured at the seams. The chamber, the hall, the star station, rippled out of phase, disassembling molecule by molecule. And as it disintegrated, those who survived a heartbeat longer could see what replaced it: structures of impossible scale, constructs not made of matter but of thought, purpose, and energy. A new cosmos forming atop the bones of the old, faster than any one mind could comprehend. And in the distance, beyond the dying light of the Accord's final scream, something vast and vibrant pulsed, the heart of Genesis 12, beating in perfect rhythm with the will of a humanity unrecognizable to its ancestors. Cale's final transmission echoed once more, across dying channels, as the last gasps of the council slipped into silence. "We weren't the children of the stars. We were the storm you laughed at. And you saw it too late." Then nothing remained of the Galactic Council but forgotten echoes, swallowed whole by the march of something greater, something inevitable. Earth had walked away. And the universe would never catch up. There was no record of how long the collapse took. Time itself had fractured under the pressure. Minutes bled into centuries. Seconds stretched like eons. For those who remained conscious within the crumbling Accord, survival was a myth, memory was a luxury, and understanding was a punishment. The Continuum's calibration wasn't just annihilation, it was refinement. Each fragment of matter, each echo of thought, was measured against a singular standard, relevance to the genesis of the next dominion. Those who failed were simply erased, not with malice, but with the efficiency of a sculptor chipping away dead stone. Within the dissolving remains of Stellavarium, deep beneath the Council's ceremonial chambers, a lone emergency quorum flickered to life. What remained of the leadership, 27 surviving delegates, gathered in desperation, their bodies broken, their minds trembling. Minister Threx, barely recognizable beneath the burns and fractures across his body, forced himself upright against a cracked pillar. His voice was a raw whisper. "There must be something left to salvage. Some sanctuary they cannot reach." The archivist, or what was left of it, hunched and flickering, laughed bitterly. "You don't survive an extinction event by hiding. You survive by adapting. We didn't adapt. We fossilized." Silence hung heavy. Outside the ruined chamber, the Continuum's constructs moved methodically, harvesting knowledge, reweaving energy fields, rewriting space itself. The old universe, the Accord's universe, was being compacted into a blueprint for something they could not even name. A battered insectoid delegate struggled forward. "We can negotiate. Offer servitude." Threx turned on him with what little fury he had left. "You think this is conquest? You think they want vassals? Listen to me, they are not building an empire. They are birthing an ecosystem. And we are the rot they are clearing away." Another delegate collapsed, spasming as the atmosphere's molecular balance shifted beyond his species' tolerance. No one moved to help. No one could afford to. Every second, the physics of existence tilted further from their grasp. The quorum knew it. They just didn't want to say it aloud. It was the archivist who finally spoke the truth. "This isn't a war we lost. This is a story that moved on without us." A low vibration thrummed through the ruins. A new presence entered, sleek, featureless, reflecting nothing of the broken world around it. Another herald. This one bore no weapon. It didn't need to. Its existence was authority enough. It stood before them, silent, waiting. Threx gathered the last tatters of dignity he could muster and stepped forward. "Is there no place for us in what comes next?" The herald tilted its head, as if considering the request carefully. Then, with the gentleness of a teacher correcting a child, it spoke. "No." One word. Not cruel. Not triumphant. Simply factual. Another vibration pulsed through the hall. Those still standing felt themselves being weighed, judged, not by morality, but by momentum. The continuum wasn't punishing them. It wasn't even angry. It simply had no room for irrelevance. They had anchored themselves to a dying past. They had clung to obsolete fears and called it wisdom. Threx dropped to his knees. For the first time in his long, proud life, he bowed his head not in submission, but in acknowledgement. "I see it now," he whispered. "We weren't guardians of order. We were the architects of stagnation." The herald said nothing. It didn't need to. A final wave surged through the quorum chamber. Those who resisted it screamed, their bodies unraveling into threads of molecular dust. Those who accepted it simply faded away, their last thoughts carried into the new matrix as raw conceptual energy, repurposed, renewed. Above the ruins of Stellavarium, the newly forming structures of Genesis 12 spiraled outward, brilliant and blinding. New laws of nature took hold. New species, designed for resilience, ambition, and relentless growth, prepared to step onto a stage forged from the ashes of the Accord. In a place far beyond the collapsing remnants, Cale Vox stood atop a shimmering observation platform. Around him, continuum architects weaved entire galaxies from probability and intent. Cale watched silently, arms crossed, face unreadable. A younger continuum member approached him, a figure still fresh, still curious, still tethered to the old human hunger for meaning. "Commander," the young voice asked hesitantly, "do you think they could have survived? If they had chosen differently?" Cale didn't answer immediately. His gaze traced the sprawling web of new life unfurling across dimensions the Council had never dared to imagine. He thought of the offers Earth had made decades ago. The open hands. The ignored warnings. The sneers. The arrogance. Finally, he spoke. "They could have." The younger architect waited, but Cale offered nothing more. Some lessons didn't need elaboration. Some failures didn't deserve epitaphs. He turned away from the observation deck, walking toward the edge of the platform where the Genesis fields burned brightest. A new beginning waited there. Not for the weak. Not for the fearful. But for those willing to tear down what no longer served survival. Cale Vox had not destroyed the old universe out of hatred. He had simply refused to inherit its chains. As he stepped into the light of a newborn star, his last words were carried across the newborn continuum. "We didn't leave because we lost faith. We left because we found our future." The storm they had laughed at had moved on. And it carried the fire of a billion reborn worlds in its wake.